Our story today takes us to the country of Saudi Arabia to the year 1986, where a South Asian married couple, Rihanna Saleh and Salahuddin Ahmed, a computer engineer, live with their toddler daughter, Ruby Angela Saleh. They had moved here from the country where they were originally from, Bangladesh, to take advantage of the burgeoning oil economy. Rihanna herself was an accomplished woman who had given up her career to nurture her family, and then on December 12, 1986, the family added another member to their flock, a little boy with big, beautiful brown eyes and adorable, fluffy cheeks. They named this little cherub Fahim, which means scholar in Arabic. The family lovingly called him Fahmy, and perhaps it was the good luck brought on from Fahim's birth that the family moved next to Louisiana, USA. The reason of this move was that Ruby and Fahim's father, Salahuddin, had gained entry into the university to get a PhD in computer science. To support him and the kids, Rihanna started working at the local laundromat since the stipend for PhD is never nearly enough to sustain a family. And then, more good news for the family in 1991. They added another family member, this time a baby daughter called Rifayat Saleh. With the family and PhD now complete, they moved next to the frigid but beautiful area of upstate New York. Then, a few years later, one night, Fahim overhears a conversation between his parents about finances. And next week onwards, Fahim gets to work. Literally. At 10 years old, he started selling candies to his classmates for marked up prices. And then he started his second career. Can you imagine, as a 10-year-old, a second career, and starts selling handmade jewelry to kids in the neighborhood. By the time he's 12, Fahim had taught himself coding, which doesn't surprise anyone in the least. After all, he took after his father, who was a brilliant computer engineer. As an 8th grader, Fahim set up his first company and started bringing in a real income by making websites for others. Next, he created a monetized website called Monkey Do. Jokes, pranks, fake poop, fart spray, and more for teenagers. So what I just read out is the actual logo of his company. Next, he created a website that became all the rage among teenagers and preteens alike, and that company was called prankdial.com. 2 years later, as a 15-year-old, he launched yet another project that turned into a company in the year 2003. This really worried Fahim's parents, as they were concerned that he was neglecting schoolwork at the cost of building all these websites. But the day he earned his first $500 check from Google ad revenue, Fahim's father took him to the bank and opened his first bank account. By this time, the family had moved yet again to the town of Poughkeepsie, New York, where Fahim's parents gave him the biggest room in the house because that room doubled up as his company office. He created WizTeen, a network of around a dozen websites targeted at teens and preteens, where he customized social media and instant messenger services. Fahim made avatars for AOL and AIM and other private messaging services. And by this time, by the way, he was only 16 years old. At the age of 17, he had earned enough from his projects that he took admission at Bentley University and paid for his own education. Fahim would often get so immersed in work that he would even forget to eat. And so his father always took it upon himself to make sure that his son was fed. And he made what the family used to call, quote unquote, a surprise sandwich for Fahim. And what was that surprise sandwich? He would put everything that was in the refrigerator between 2 loaves of bread. By this time, Fahim was at university and he was already making a six-figure income. In 2009, Fahim graduated from Bentley University, which is in Boston, Massachusetts, and life was truly smooth sailing. His younger sister Rifayat by this time was about to graduate from high school, and Fahim's older sister Ruby was well settled in her great career. As Fahim found success after success, he never forgot his family and often picked up the tab of all family checks. After this, when his father was forced to retire early from his job, Fahim sent his parents a monthly check to ensure that they would never have to worry about finances. Fahim kept expanding his footprint and started multinational projects like Betrayal in 2015 in Dhaka, Bangladesh, and Gokada in January 2018 in Lagos, Nigeria. And later, he started a venture capital project called Adventure Capital in New York City. Of course, his parents were very proud of this. But what truly made their hearts and their chest swell with pride and gratitude was that Fahim, the tech entrepreneur, was truly selfless. He financed projects that could help people in fledgling economies. He truly embodied the Islamic principles of charity. Not only was he giving coding prodigies a chance, but he also gave the poor, the unlettered men of Lagos a chance to make a real earning and a real living with his project Gokada. One of the examples which is often cited of Fahim's giving nature is that of a teenager whose name is Ahmed Fahad. When Ahmed Fahad was a teenager himself, Fahim gave him a coding project and hired him to head the company Gokada, which is a ride-sharing and dating app which now, as of 2023, spans 5 cities in Bangladesh and Nepal and has over 8 million users. Closer to home, Fahim gave a 16-year-old boy, Tyrell Haspel, who was a great coder, a chance, and he saw a lot of promise in this boy. Fahim was a doer, a mover, a shaker, and a builder. By 2017, the Saleh family was busy planning the wedding of their eldest daughter Ruby. Fahim was very close to his family and surprised his dear sister Ruby and his brother-in-law Amar Bashir with one-of-a-kind fireworks when they got married at the Ritz-Carlton in Abu Dhabi. The next 3 years were a frenzy of work in which Gokada, his company, became a hit in Nigeria, but it was later banned by Nigerian authorities. In the meanwhile, great news for Fahim's family, as Fahim's eldest sister Ruby gave birth to a baby. But shortly after that, the pandemic hit and the world stopped in its tracks in March 2020. At this time, the entire Saleh family was quarantined in different parts of America and Asia. Fahim had bought a luxury apartment in Manhattan, New York City, in the year 2019, just before the pandemic began. He was regularly keeping in touch with all his family members, but all of a sudden, the family realized in the second week of July that they had not heard from Fahim for almost 3 days straight. So they sent a younger cousin on Tuesday, July 14, 2020, to go and check on Fahim. This cousin was a software engineer who had become a software engineer because she was really inspired by her cousin brother. Fahim lived on the 7th floor of a luxury condo which costed a staggering $2.5 million. This building was made in such a way that the elevator would open onto a house and there was only one apartment on each floor. the apartments themselves did not have an entrance gate or like a house gate. As Fahim's cousin, and she's been identified as A in all the newspaper articles that I read, had stepped onto the penthouse floor, she walked into a truly ghastly scene. After walking a few steps, she found herself face to face with a headless torso lying in the middle of the living room. It's horrifying to fathom what this poor girl had witnessed. She immediately called the police, who arrived later and started by cordoning off the crime scene. Crying uncontrollably, cousin A called Fahim's real sister Rifayat, and then together they informed all their family members. I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of having to be in the position to inform any family member about their son and brother's death. As the police arrived, they subsequently found other body parts of Fahim's body, which were all bundled up in several garbage bags. And then the police also noticed that there was an electric saw which was plugged into the outlet right beside Fahim's body. This scene was straight out of the television show Dexter. Next, the crime scene investigators got to work looking at the camera footage of Fahim's apartment. Now I'm going to describe to you exactly what they saw on that CCTV footage. At around 8:37 a.m. on Monday, July 13, 2020, the security camera shows a man with his head covered and with a big duffel bag entering the lobby of Fahim's luxury apartment building. This man stays in the lobby and waits for 5 hours. Then Fahim gets into the elevator in the early afternoon around 1:40 p.m. It seems that Fahim had just come back from a 3-mile run and he's wearing his running clothes. Then Fahim gets into the elevator and so does this tall, imposing figure. This man is dressed in really nice clothes. He's wearing a lovely suit with a white shirt and a tie. He's wearing a baseball cap, a full mask with sunglasses. Of course, all of us remember what the pandemic was like, so this is very normal clothing for that time. Next, we see that the CCTV footage reveals that this tall, imposing guy is standing right behind Fahim, and he tases Fahim at the neck area as the elevator doors open on the 7th floor. Now, some people might not be familiar with what's a taser gun. So a taser looks like a gun which gives out a strong electric shock which basically immobilizes a person and for a couple of seconds. And according to the manufacturer's website, there's a website of this really popular taser which is called Taser Pulse. It says that the cost of a taser is around $399, which is about 33,000 rupees. Now this taser, which has an electric shock, it disables a person for more than 30 seconds. This is very commonly used by the police in America, and that's what this man had used on Fahim. This is exactly where the CCTV footage cuts out as the doors close on Fahim's floor. The elevator opens again 1 hour later around 2:30 p.m. and then the CCTV footage again shows the same man seems to have changed his clothes. This time he's wearing a light colored hooded sweatshirt with black and white shoes and black or some sort of dark colored pants. This man appears to be using a handheld vacuum with which he vacuums the inside of the elevator. Of course, this man was trying to vacuum the evidence from the elevator floor. Now the question is, what was this man trying to vacuum? Well, the interesting thing is that when a taser gun is used, it throws out a small disc-like shaped paper. And there are actually not one, but a few hundred papers come out of a taser gun. And all these little pieces of paper have a unique ID tag on them. So that's exactly what this man was trying to vacuum. And he did a great job of cleaning after himself. But very thankfully, he missed one tiny piece of paper. And this tiny piece of paper had lodged itself into the carpet corner. And then the ID was later recovered by the police. Now, imagine that the size of this disc was so small, it's actually smaller than a penny or even a dime, like smaller than a coin that you can think of. And the number on this taser disc-like paper was 1001335579. The police was able to track that the company FedEx had dropped off this taser packet 1 month before July 14th, around June 14th, at an address in Brooklyn, New York. And the person who had signed to receive this package was a man which was already familiar to each and every single person of the Saleh family for more than 5 years. This man's name was Tyrese Devon Haspel, and he was Fahim's former assistant who was just 21 years old. Next, the police went to arrest this man, and that's when they uncovered a saga that was more than a few years in the making. On Friday, January 10th, 2020, about 6 months before Fahim's murder, Fahim accessed his bank account information, and that's when he noticed something really strange. He saw an unauthorized charge on his company's account, and the company's name was Adventure Capital. He saw that there was this charge of about $35,000, which is the equivalent of 30 lakh rupees. Now, remember that this is the company that Fahim had founded inside of America, in addition to all the other work that he was doing in Nigeria and Bangladesh. After discovering this, Fahim writes to his assistant Tyrese. And this is in the politest language you can imagine. He writes the email, and I just wish that all of us had lovely bosses who would write such lovely emails. He starts by saying this, quote, "My memory must be failing me, but I don't remember authorizing this charge. Can you please explain?" Unquote. To which the assistant Tyrese responds, quote, "Thanks for bringing this to my attention. I'm not sure of this myself. Must be a clerical error. Can you give me more information so that I can look into it and remedy this?" Unquote. The exchange between these two men, Fahim and Tyrese, it grew a little more tense over the weekend. Fahim writes another email one night later, which is by this time it's Saturday night, and he writes in that email, "What's the explanation here?" And then Tyrese finally emails Fahim back and says, quote, "I was desperate and needed to pay off debt to help my family. I apologize for deceiving you, and I'm ready to take responsibility for my actions." Unquote. The nice and giving person that Fahim was, he asked his attorney to draw up papers, including a notarized confession, which was signed by Tyrese, and a promissory note, which had a 2-year, not 1 year, it actually had a 2-year plan. So Fahim was going out of his way to be nice to this person, despite the fact that this man had stolen money from him. Fahim thought that the payment plan was working well. Tyrese had made an initial payment of $20,000 by March 3 of 2020, and then 4 subsequent monthly payments of $2,916 on April 2nd, on May 5th, on June 2nd, and then on the 1st of July 2020. But actually, Fahim never received a single penny from Tyrese. Tyrese was so clever that he designed a clever plan in which he opened a PayPal account under another name. And he was basically pretending to pay money to Fahim. and he actually never did it. In fact, has Tyrese continued to steal money from Fahim through the PayPal scheme, and in total he had stolen $98,849 from Fahim. And this was already done between the months of December 18 and May 2019. But the only thing that Fahim knew about was just the $35,000 that he had witnessed as an unauthorized transaction from his bank account. So Fahim did not even know of the $98,849. When the police was investigating this further, while the police was hard working this investigation further, an autopsy was done of Fahim's body, which revealed some ghastly details. Fahim had been tased from a taser gun, and then he quickly fell unconscious, but only for a few seconds. He had in fact regained consciousness, and at this point, Tyrese had stabbed Fahim in the neck and torso more than 5 times. In fact, the medical examiner noted multiple wounds on Fahim's arms, his left hand, his forehead. There were cuts all over his body, which shows that Fahim was trying his hardest to fend off this man Tyrese, who was more than 5 to 7 inches taller than Fahim. The police further uncovered that on the evening of Monday, July 14, 2020, a man who looked like Tyrese was actually recorded on a surveillance camera near the Hudson River waterfront near Jersey City, New Jersey. And this man was throwing a big bag into the river. The New York Police Department has its own divers, and they actually tried their hardest to try to recover this bag from the river, but they were not successful. This is such a terribly heart-wrenching story. The motive in this case, the police says, is very clear. It was embezzlement. Tyrese had access to Fahim's checkbooks, his credit cards, and he managed passwords and pins and had access to email and postal mail. In that sense, he had control of so much money. The impact on Fahim's family cannot be described in words. It's a pain that one can only feel. The most devastating detail that I found when I was researching this story was that 3 days before Fahim was supposed to be buried in Hudson Valley, Ruby, his older sister, gets a call from the funeral home, and she's told by the funeral director that it's not possible to put back Fahim's limbs, his head, to the torso. This only furthered the pain and the agony that the Saleh family was going through. I think I can speak for everyone that this case is a textbook case of an utterly senseless murder. Fahim came from such a lovely family who had raised him in such an amazing way that despite being a genius, he never truly forgot that he came from so little, from such a humble background. Fahim had little to no interest in becoming a rich entrepreneur. He never hung out with rich entrepreneurs. His heart was open and he helped those who needed help, and he was very benevolent. And unfortunately, it was his kind heart which worked against him. But the atrocity in this case doesn't stop here. In October 2020, Tyrese entered a not guilty plea to second-degree murder, grand larceny, burglary, tampering with evidence, and concealment of a human corpse. After killing Fahim, Tyrese went on a joyride all over town. He kept using Fahim's credit cards. Credit card records also show that Tyrese had purchased a nice leather tote bag from the French store APC in Soho in New York, and this entire time he was with his girlfriend. The police also says that Tyrese was obsessed with Fahim's lavish lifestyle. In fact, he invited friends to stay in Fahim's condo whenever Fahim was far away from his house. Tyrese Haspel lived out his fantasy life in New York. Many surveillance videos capture him with his girlfriend getting out of Ubers using Fahim's credit cards and shopping at luxury stores like Christian Louis Vuitton. The biggest irony is that Fahim spent his entire life working so hard. He literally started working as a 10-year-old, and by the time of his murder at 33, he was still slogging, while the man who killed him had the audacity to plead not guilty. 3 years after his murder, on July 2023, 3 years after Fahim's murder, in July 2023, Tyrese, who was by then 24 years old, appeared in the court for a preliminary hearing where he didn't even have the basic decency to accept a charge and plead guilty. There are mountains of evidence against this man, and I don't see how he will get away with it. As of the recording of this audio, he is in jail. Hopefully justice delayed won't be justice denied, and that the jury in this case, whenever Tyrese goes to trial, won't fall for Tyrese's shenanigans of pleading insanity, because monsters like him, they usually resort to self-defense tactics of insanity. Other than thoughts and prayers, you and I can't offer anything else to the Saleh family other than our undying vigilance that men like Tyrese don't escape justice.